Greetings and welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church, both online and live streaming, or rather those are the same thing, but we're live streaming from the chapel today. Our worship team is here. We're very excited about it, and very excited as of next Sunday to welcome people back in person, as well as continuing our online format. So whether this is your first time with us or your 1001st, know that you are welcome here and we are glad to have you. We are so happy to provide this forum to find comfort, to recommit ourselves to the mission of supporting one another in our spiritual journeys, to working for justice, to caring for the earth, and building the common good. We gather to recommit ourselves to dismantling systems of oppression and injustice each Sunday. It is good to be together. I'm the Reverend Christian Schmidt, the interim minister of this congregation. I have a couple announcements for you. The first one I've already mentioned, which is that as of next week, we are welcoming congregants back into our sanctuary for multi-platform worship. So look forward to that. We're really excited about it. I am, at least. And also, religious education is getting started up right now. We're looking forward to it. It starts officially next Sunday, April 3rd at 11:30 for ages 5 to 18. We're going to use the OWL Human Sexuality curriculum, that is OWL for Our Whole Lives. To learn more about this program, you can visit the UUA's OWL page. Just search for UUA and OWL. We'll be having an orientation for parents and children today, Sunday, March 27 at 11:30. So if you're at home watching this right now, get ready to come on up for that. All parents must attend this orientation before their children can participate in OWL. Lastly, I want to continue to remind you to look for your emails, phones, the website, this worship services announcements for continued updates about worship and other church happenings. And know if you're ever in need, we're just an email or phone call away. I invite us all now to take a deep breath as we enter into our time of worship together. I invite the choir now to lead us in Love is the Teaching, composed by our own Steve Bogart.
Our opening words this morning are from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Cast your vision here in the middle of the hardest moment in the turning of the season, the new era, this life with so much worth saving, this fragile faith for the children born now, into the world as it is with the threat of war and whole continents burning still, while the memory lingers of holidays, chaotic and miraculous. Into this day, offer the vision you've tried to talk yourself down from, your wildest dream, your audacious aims, the beauty that whispers to you to follow and build and become. For this world coming undone by distraction and greed and fear, this world divided by made-up borders, fake fights, and all that needs forgiveness. Here, stir up your steadfast hope, your resolute clarity of what remains possible. Be generous with your dreaming and brave. All paths to the future are born in this courage of imagination, this willingness to shed, to salvage, to start again, to be this blessing for each other, to be this blessed. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. We'd like you to join us in singing Be Thou My Vision. It's number 20 in your gray hymnals.
I invite you now as we unite our voices to speak aloud the covenant of our community. These words are both known within our hearts and on your screen. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in community to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all.
Mulligan and His Steam Shovel. Story and pictures by Virginia Lee Burton. Mike Mulligan had a steam shovel, a beautiful red steam shovel. Her name was Mary Ann. Mike Mulligan was very proud of Mary Ann. He always said she could dig as much in a day as 100 men could dig in a week, but he'd never been quite sure that that was true. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann had been digging together for years and years. Mike Mulligan took such good care of Mary Ann, she never grew old. It was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who dug the great canals for the big boats to sail through. When people used to stop and watch them, Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann used to dig a little faster and a little better. The more people stopped, the faster and better they dug. Some days they would keep as many as 37 trucks busy taking away the dirt they had dug. Then along came the new gasoline shovels and the new electric shovels and the new diesel motor shovels and took all the jobs away from the steam shovels. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann were very sad. All of the other steam shovels were being sold for junk or left out in old gravel pits to rust and fall apart. Mike loved Mary Ann. He couldn't do that to her. He had taken such good care of her that she could still dig as much in a day as 100 men could dig in a week. At least he thought she could, but he wasn't quite sure. Everywhere they went, the new gas shovels and new electric shovels and new diesel motor shovels had all the jobs. No one wanted Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann anymore. Then, one day, Mike read in a newspaper that the town of Popperville was going to build a new town hall. "We're going to dig the cellar of that town hall," said Mike to Mary Ann, and off they started. They crawled along slowly up hills and down hills till they came to the little town of Popperville. They started in early the next morning, just as the sun was coming up. Soon a little boy came along. "Do you think you'll finish by sundown?" he said to Mike Mulligan. "Sure," said Mike, "if you stay and watch us. We always work faster and better when someone's watching us." So the little boy stayed to watch. Then Mrs. McGillicuddy, Henry B. Swab, and the town constable came over to see what was happening, and they stayed to watch. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dug a little faster and a little better. This gave the little boy a good idea. He ran off and told the postman with the morning mail, the telegraph boy on his bicycle, the milkman with his cart and horse, the doctor on his way home, and the farmer and his family coming into town for the day, and they all stopped and stayed to watch. That made Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dig a little faster and a little better, and they finished the first quarter neat and square, but the sun was getting higher. Clang, clang! The fire department arrived. They'd seen the smoke and thought there was a fire. Then the little boy said, "Why don't you stay and watch?" So the fire department of Popperville stayed to watch Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann. When they heard the fire engine, the children in the school across the street couldn't keep their eyes on their lessons. The teacher called a long recess, and the whole school came out to watch. That made Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dig still faster and still better. They finished the second corner neat and square, but the sun was right up in the top of the sky. Now, the girl who answers the telephone called up the next towns of Bangerville and Bopperville and Kipperville and Copperville and told them what was happening in Popperville. All the people came over to see if Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel could dig the cellar in just one day. The more people came, the faster Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dug. But they would have to hurry. They were only halfway through, and the sun was beginning to go down. They finished the third corner, sweet, neat, and square. Never had Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann had so many people to watch them. Never had they dug so fast and so well, and never had the sun seemed to go down so fast. "Hurry, Mike Mulligan, hurry, hurry," shouted the little boy. "There's not much more time." Dirt was flying everywhere, and the smoke and steam were so thick that people could hardly see anything. But listen, bang, bang, slam, louder and louder, faster and faster. Then suddenly it was quiet. Slowly the dirt settled down, and the smoke and steam cleared away, and there was the cellar all finished. 4 corners, neat and square, 4 walls straight down, and Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann at the bottom, and the sun was just going down behind the hill. "Hooray!" shouted the people. "Hooray for Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel! They have dug the cellar in just one day." Suddenly the little boy said, "How are they going to get out?" "That's right," said Mrs. McGillicuddy to Henry B. Swab. "How is he going to get that steam shovel out?" Henry B. Swab didn't answer, but he smiled in a rather mean way. Then everybody said, "How are they going to get out?" "Hi, Mike Mulligan, how are you going to get your steam shovel out?" Nothing like this had ever happened before in Popperville. Everybody started talking at once, and everybody had a different idea, and everybody thought his idea was the best. They talked and they talked, and they argued and they fought till they were worn out, and still no one knew how to get Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann out of the cellar they had dug. Then Henry B. Swab said, "The job isn't finished because Mary Ann isn't out of the cellar, so Mike Mulligan won't get paid." And he smiled again in a rather mean way. Now, the little boy, who'd been keeping very quiet, had another good idea. He said, "Why couldn't we leave Mary Ann in the cellar and build a new town hall above her? Let her be the furnace for the new town hall, and let Mike Mulligan be the janitor. Then you wouldn't have to buy a new furnace, and we could pay Mike Mulligan for digging the cellar in just one day." "Why not?" said Henry B. Swab, and smiled in a way that was not quite so mean. "Why not?" said Mrs. McGillicuddy. "Why not?" said the town constable. "Why not?" said all the people. So they found a ladder and climbed down into the cellar to ask Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann. "Why not?" said Mike Mulligan, and so it was decided, and everybody was happy. Now, when you go to Popperville, be sure to go down to the cellar of the new town hall. There they'll be, Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann. Mike in his rocking chair smoking his pipe, and Mary Ann beside him, warming up the meetings in the new town hall.
Mount Vernon Unitarian Church continues to share the plate with committed organizations that you, our members, have chosen. During the month of March, our offering is being shared with MVUC's partner churches in Transylvania and in India. Along with our spiritual and community support, our partners benefit from our financial gifts to further Unitarian Universalism in these sacred places in the world. We are a community that invites spiritual and material generosity from our members and friends. Our family gives because we support all the efforts to build the beloved community. Particularly, we support the Lifespan Spiritual Growth team and volunteers. They do many things, but the most visible is the religious education programs, not just for the young, but for everybody. I invite this gathered community to offer whatever you are most comfortable with in spirit and financial generosity for the mission of our church community. If you would like to write and mail a check for the offering, please make it to MVUC, and in the memo line, indicate how you would like it to be used. You can also follow the link in the chat box to make a one-time or recurring payment. We are very grateful for your donations.
want to express my appreciation for all our music folks, for this choir, for Yvonne, that was lovely, for everyone, for Mark for organizing this. Let's take a moment to prepare ourselves for our time of silent meditation followed by spoken. Get comfortable where you are, get any wiggles out. Take a deep breath in and out. We'll begin with a time of silence starting now. Our spoken meditation today comes from the Reverend Karen Johnston. She writes, "Do not be alone right now. Gather together. Gathering together grows courage in ourselves and in others who see the numbers swelling. It's a small thing, but right now it is an important thing. Great sources of wisdom remind us, just because you cannot stem the tide of all hate, it is still right to do the thing you can do. These things add up, your one thing and my one thing, his one thing and their one thing and her one thing. Together it becomes a big thing. Do not be alone right now. Any liberation, all liberation, is collective liberation. My freedom is bound with yours and yours with mine inextricably. So let us together cast our lots doing this big thing, bending the moral arc of the universe toward justice. Amen." I want to invite us all to rise and to sing together our next hymn. It's number 108 in your gray hymnals. My life flows on in endless song.
Amen.
Our reading this morning is by the Reverend Meg Barnhouse, entitled Brick by Brick. All summer, workers have been building a brick wall along the road by my neighborhood. Against the brutal heat, they stretch a tarp overhead to get a little shade. I've watched them take bricks in their dusty brown hands, one by one, butter them thickly with mortar, line them up and tap them down, row by row. One man, who looks to be in his 70s, is the leader. His skin is the color of bittersweet chocolate. His beard is gray. Slender and tall, he moves from one group of bricklayers to the next, reaching and bending, looking like a heron in a marsh. When he pauses, he stands very straight. I see him teach the others how to do the work. He stoops over to look at a line of bricks, hands on his thighs, inspecting the work. Sometimes as I drive by, I see him put his hand on the back of the person he's teaching. Often they're both smiling. He looks like he loves what he's doing. I wonder how he can love building walls day after day, handling bricks, teaching the art of laying bricks. Is it the teaching he loves, seeing how his students learn, what their styles are, how their work shows their character? Does he love the wall itself? Does he know about when it'll be done? Does he look forward to seeing it finished? Or does he love the process, the feel of the bricks in his hands, the squish of the mortar, the challenge of making the symmetry of pillars and arches, the geometry of it? I think from the look on his face that he loves the process. I imagine that he never thinks about the end of the project, the completion of the wall. I think he will go on to the next wall as if it were just a continuation of this one, then the next one, and the next, and never be bored. I want to be like that, and I am, I guess, in my job as a minister. The bricks are stories. I hear stories of family and work, stories of loss and reconciliation, stories of rejection and disaster, illness and healing, birthing and dying. I tell stories every Sunday, and in between, teaching, challenging, confessing, inviting people to learn and laugh and think. Brick by brick, story by story, we build a church, seeing the patterns, the symmetry, the plain joy of setting one story on the other, sustained by the strong and beautiful structures they make. We will never be finished. It's okay. So ends the reading.
Now we can see that
In 1988, the Los Angeles Times Magazine did a cover article in which they asked futurists, which are experts who project trends to forecast what the future may look like. They asked these futurists to tell them what Los Angeles would look like in 25 years, that is, in 2013. I want to make a note here that the magazine, which was later rebranded LA, was discontinued in 2012, so they may not have seen their own future so well. In any case, the answers are by turns sort of brilliant and hilarious, and if you Google this, you can find it too. Some of the things the futurists predicted have absolutely come to pass. Traffic is worse than ever. They predicted a version of the smart house with wiring in which you can automatically turn things on and off. Everything's connected. I don't think they envisioned Wi-Fi working quite like it does, but on the whole, it's a pretty good prediction. They even got the rise of telecommuting kind of right. They imagined people working from home more, and even a version of virtual school is mentioned in there. And some of the answers are sort of partially true. There's the household robot that cooks and cleans. It seems a little outlandish, more from a science fiction movie. But on the other hand, I have a Roomba in my house that cleans, and my stove and refrigerator and microwave now do a shockingly large number of tasks, more or less automatically, with relatively little input from me. So maybe that one's closer than I think. Can I just tell you all a small story too? I had a congregant in a past church who worked for the company that created the Roomba. And he said when they first started, one of the things they realized is that in order to make a robot do something, you have to really, really understand what is being done. Because if you don't, you certainly can't tell a robot how to do it. And they initially started doing industrial sort of level cleaning, right? Very large machines that would clean very large spaces. And in their research, they realized that no one really knew anything about cleaning, actually. There was no good studies about whether the cleaning was effective or what cleaners were most effective, and they had to start almost from the ground in order to do this project. And I just thought that's the most interesting thing I've heard in a long time, that we're trying to create robots to do things that we don't actually know how to do. That's a whole nother sermon, though, I think. So anyway, this article from LA Magazine, it does see the information and technology revolution coming. Of course, the internet already existed in 1988, though not in anything like the form it does now. It drastically underestimates the speed of that revolution, and it completely misses out on things like social media, which of course didn't really exist 15 years ago and now are everywhere. In fact, this article lifts up the CD-ROM as the paragon of memory holding, which seems particularly quaint, since by 2013 that technology was already obsolete. In any case, the story is told from the perspective of one family's day in 2013 in LA. They wake up, they go to school and work, they deal with regular home chores and such. And to be honest, on the whole, I found it sort of shocking how much they got right or close to right, at least about areas in which predictions are possible. Because it has been my experience that predicting the future is notoriously tricky. I'm a big sports fan, and I know I would be a terrible sports bettor because the things I think will happen just so often don't. Instead, in congregations like this and in our lives, we cast a vision for what's possible, for what we want to happen. And that's not an easy thing to do, but it's necessary. It's a huge part of what we do in church. We acknowledge that the world is not as we wish it was. Not in all respects. And then we do several things about this. One is to support one another and others experiencing difficulties with that reality. Another thing we do is we envision what a better, fairer, more just and loving world would be like. And then we work to make that happen. So we might broadly call these three things pastoral care, casting vision, social justice, or at least they overlap with those. There are other names for this, and no term is perfect. So today we're talking mostly about that second one, about casting vision. I often do an exercise with members of the congregation and several congregations I've served to envision our congregation in 20 years, which is sufficiently far in the future to make it difficult to predict, as the LA Times showed us, but also far enough to make you really dream big. And so what I ask people to do is to make an artistic representation of that to share with each other. And it's always so fascinating. You find out who you didn't know was an artist who is amazing, for one thing. But you get these wonderful representations of art and vision. I've had things like a food pantry shown in all its detail, various representation of community connections. One person once drew me a huge shared table to eat at. That was her vision of the future of the congregation. Pandemic has made that tough right now, but it's a vision for the future. And the thing often that most jumps out at me from this is the sense of and need for community. And I know this is true here at Mount Vernon. When I do this, almost every person, almost every time, talks about the need for a community to be a part of, to share with, to seek support from, to just be with. And that's at the heart of what we do in congregational life. To quote from Mount Vernon's own vision, we aspire to live our UU principles and be a strong voice for liberal religion, create vital worship experience for our minds, hearts, and spirits. We aspire to engage in holistic lifespan spiritual growth, to strengthen our commitments to social, economic, and environmental justice, to work with our local community and our spiritual partners around the globe to build connections in a diverse, multi-generational world, and to practice intentional and responsible stewardship to support our mission and vision. That's our vision of what this could look like. And all of this speaks to how we want to be as a church community, and very much to the importance of community. The words connection and vital, support, live, ring out to me. That this is who we have said we want to be. Now, our mission is shorter and sweeter. It says, Mount Vernon Unitarian Church is a loving, inclusive, spiritual community. Our mission is to support one another on our spiritual journeys, work for justice, care for the earth, and build the common good. The mission is what we do: support, work, care, build, all these good active verbs in it, in order to make our vision of the future a reality. So this year, and part of the interim, and we'll continue this in next year, we're considering how we can best fulfill our mission and vision, how we might tweak it a little bit to reflect the changes this congregation has had over recent decades and what we look forward to in the next decade or two. What does this mean right now? I had a scene from a TV show in my mind as I was writing this. If you've ever watched the TV show West Wing, it's been off the air for a few years, but it's still one of my favorites. And I say a few years, it went off the air in 2006, so more than a few. It followed the fictional presidency of Josiah Bartlett, who was famous among his staff for saying, "What's next?" Sometimes when he was just done with the conversation and was ready to move on to the next thing, but also, what's next? What else is important that we should be talking about? It's hard for most of us, and virtually impossible for a group of any people, to focus on more than one thing at a time. I find it's foolish to try, though we do it anyway. In our world, things are rarely clear. When is it time to move on to the next thing? Where is Jed Bartlett to make us do so? And some things, of course, are never truly done. The reality of COVID-19 is that it's not going away. It will be less of a factor in our lives, but it's here to stay. But I also think of things on a smaller scale. I think of my friends who are going through divorce or who have been through divorce, and what a long, slow, gradual process that is. Both the legal parts, sure, but also the emotional and logistical and practical parts. How long does it take to truly separate two lives that have been joined? Is it even possible to do so completely? Interim ministries are, by definition, something of a contractive period of what's next. Usually interims, and I fully expect this to be the case here, lead into the next era of more long-term ministry. We often call a settled ministry. Not because we settle for it, but because they are settled for the long term. But regardless of the specific outcome of an interim period, my work here is very much focused on what's next. All year long, I've been thinking about it. What's next? Not what are the next 14 things to do. I have children, so I'm used to that conversation. But just what's the one next thing? I don't expect we all agree on what the one next thing is, and there's enough uncertainty in all our futures to make any decision far from a sure thing. There are consequences to all of these decisions, to the consequences good and bad, for moving forward just as there will be with not moving forward. But for now, to take wisdom once again from pop culture, I think we're called to do, in the words of the recent movie Frozen 2, which I recommend to you wholeheartedly, we're called to do the next right thing. If you haven't seen the movie, I'll explain. A character faced with uncertainty about how to proceed in a difficult, complex situation has just this piece of wisdom. When things seem insurmountable or impossible to discern, just do the next right thing. The words of the song are, just do the next right thing, take a step, step again. It's all that I can do, the next right thing. I won't look too far ahead. It's too much for me to take, but break it down to this next breath, this next step, this next choice is one that I can make. Now, that's not foolproof advice. Sometimes one right thing can inadvertently lead on to many problematic things. Our history is littered with such circumstances. But when things are unclear, what other choice is there? Not do the next right thing? That doesn't seem very good. Not moving forward is also a choice, one that has its own serious consequences. So, friends, the future is uncertain for just about everything, and that's scary. But what we have is a community of people to be with, even in that uncertainty. A community of people to support one another. A community of people with which to build the world we dream of. And so I'm happy to be your interim minister in this time. And whatever our next step is, I know that we'll do the next right thing. May it be so. And I invite you to sing loudly with me in your green hymnal number 1020, Wo Ya Ya.
Please join me in speaking the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, none of us know for sure what's next. These last years have shown us more clearly than ever that that is so true. But what we do know is that we can work and dream for the future we wish, and that together we can make a difference. Our worship is ended, and our service begins.